Israel is one of many Middle Eastern states that was formed by colonial powers. But here, colonialists also settled, namely, settler colonialism. And this particularly enrages the world. Let's meet the colonialists who settled in Palestine. The colonialists came not only from Europe but from the entire Middle East, where despite centuries of habitation, Jews were abruptly made unwelcome by Arab governments. The Middle Eastern Jews, who by the way are not white, today constitute around half the Israeli Jewish population. And even Jews from Europe who looked white were not considered white by either their oppressors or themselves. Their non-whiteness is why they were oppressed. Apropos appearance. Did these colonialists look a little bit like refugees to you? In fact, that's exactly what they were in newspapers and official documents. Don't we love refugees?
Say it loud, say it clear. Refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear. Refugees are welcome here.
Then why were these refugees, half the Jewish people, shape-shifted into evil colonialists in almost no time? Which means that if you are a good person, you must say to them, go back where you came from. Because that's what good people tell colonialists. Whereas if you said that to refugees, you would be a racist. Is it truly humane to allow desperate people with brown skin to settle in white parts of the globe, but not the other way around? But actually, Jews might best be thought of as 2,000-year-old refugees who finally started returning home. Artifacts in Israel bear a language and history still relevant to Jews today. Which is why comparing them to white European colonialists is such a poor fit. In the whole of North America, did the British ever dig up a single English coin? Or expect to?
Merry Wives of Windsor, if the bloody thing isn't in English.
Unlike European colonialists, the Jews' agenda was not to ravage and gobble land for gold, ivory, and the glory of some monarch. It was to 1. Return to their ancient homeland, and 2. Escape lethal anti-Semitism. And even these goals required papers, accords, and UN approval. Now let's consider the Palestinian refugees of 1948. Turns out they are treated the complete opposite way from their Jewish counterparts. Not only are Palestinians not recast as something diabolical, but they retain the identity refugee with all its pathos generation after generation. No accident here. For it was arranged exclusively for Palestinian refugees that their descendants would also be labeled refugees. This was the Arab leaders' strategy to hold out for right of return, with an ever-increasing population, moreover. Now, at 7+ decades, most Palestinians have thus not been resettled, and even where there is Palestinian self-governance, refugee camps are maintained. Of course, right of return is never exercised by millions of refugees around the world, notably Jews, who simply want to get on with their lives. But Arab leaders opted instead for political gamesmanship, regardless the cost in wretchedness and self-destructive radicalization to their people. In truth, under the persecution bar of international law, anyone engaging in hostilities based on religion is denied the status of refugee. Which means that anti-Jewish, not Zionist, incitement, easily found among Palestinians as well as their leaders, technically disqualifies them as refugees altogether, let alone with right of return. Perhaps one can understand the reason for this law. Of course, some will say that Jews, however you label them, stole another people's land, and this makes Israel an illegitimate state with no right to exist. But the premise itself is flawed because Palestinians were not a separate people when Israel was created. So if there is an aggrieved party, it behooves us to at least identify it correctly.